Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce Economic Development Committee. I'm Larry Carr, standing in as your chair for the day. We've got a couple of great presentations, and I want to jump right into them, but we've got a really great turnout this morning, good group. I think most of us know each other, but for the sake of our presentation this morning, we're going to do a really quick round robin of introductions, and I mean really quick. So no speeches. I'm Larry Carr with the Chamber Board. Lori?
I'm Lori Allen with the Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce, Director of Programs and Communications.
Nick?
Good morning, Nick Yates, CEO, President of the Chamber of Commerce and co-owner of Crafters Restaurant.
Mario?
Mario Banuelos, Rotarian and the chair of a small business training program.
John Horner?
Good morning, everyone. John Horner, trustee with Morgan Hill Unified.
Brian Sullivan?
Good morning, Brian Sullivan, citizen, Morgan Hill.
Steve McFarland? Steve, you're on mute.
Morning, Steve McFarland, member of the board of the chamber, and I'm with the Better Business Bureau.
Awesome. John McKay?
John McKay, Morgan Hill City Council and involved resident.
Tim Hurley?
Good morning, Tim Hurley, Chamber Board and Creative Manufacturing Solutions owner.
Great. Brittney?
Good morning, Brittney Sherman, City of Morgan Hill, Economic Development Coordinator.
Armando?
Audrey Garcia, Morgan Hill Chamber of Commerce, Board Chair.
Steve Tate?
Steve Tate, citizen.
Former Mayor? Alex Kennett? Alex, we can't hear you. Alex Kennett, he's on the Open Space Board and an active resident of Morgan Hill. Larry Ingram?
Let's see, resident of South County since '79 and representing Trail Dust Barbecue.
Barbie Lee?
Hi, Barbie Lee with Remax Realty Partners here in Morgan Hill.
And Matt Mayhood?
Good morning, everybody. Matt Mayhood, City of Morgan Hill Economic Development Director.
Awesome. What a great turnout today. So really excited to have so many people join us and excited about the presentation that we're going to have. We have Breann Boyle joining us this morning from the Office of Sustainability out of the County Executive's Office. The county has been working on a draft sustainability plan, and Breann's here to talk to us about it this morning. It's a exciting plan, exciting opportunity, and the county actually reached out to us to seek our input and give a presentation. So we love that when we're approached about things that affect our community and wanting input from us. So Breann, we're going to take about 20 minutes, maybe 20, 30 minutes to hear about this project, go through your presentation, and then we'll have time for questions and good dialogue. And then the rest of our agenda, Brittney's going to talk to us about some downtown activities that I know are important for all of us. So Breann, I'm going to hand it right on off to you to introduce yourself and the project.
Thank you so much, Larry. And like Larry mentioned, I am Breann Boyle. I'm with the County of Santa Clara in the Office of Sustainability. And I have a cold right now, so I'm going to try to speak as clearly as I can so you can all hear me, but apologies for that. Let me share my screen with the presentation, or looks like screen sharing is disabled. I don't know if you can change that.
Is Lori still on? Can you give Breann the ability to screen share?
Are you there? He was there.
I'm here, gang. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. No worries. Sorry, Breann. Sorry, Breann.
That's okay.
Yep. Okay. You're fine now, Breann. Go ahead.
Yep. Okay. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes.
There you go. All right. So today I'm going to talk about our climate roadmap, our sustainability plan, and we're actually going to you're going to have the opportunity to vote on our draft strategies. So I'll give a little bit of background, give an overview of our climate roadmap process so far, and then we're going to be using a tool called Consider It to actually vote on the strategies, and I'll walk you through that tool. And then we can save time for questions at the end as well. And if you have questions, clarification questions, you can always stop me while I'm talking too. So many of you are probably already aware of this, but climate change is an urgent issue confronting our world today. Burning of fossil fuels for transportation and energy is a primary source of greenhouse gas emissions and the primary driver of climate change. And we're already seeing those effects in our county. Just some of the impacts that we've seen in the past couple of years. I'm sure you're all aware of the 2020 SCU lightning complex fires. They burned over 165,000 acres in our county alone. The county also experienced 20 extreme heat days back in 2020. That's a day over 90 degrees Fahrenheit, as compared to our historical average of about 4 days per year. Last year in June, we declared a drought due to extreme drought conditions. And we'll see more of these boom and bust type events, more heavy storms. We can see an increase in the number and severity of floods in parts of our state, and then longer dry spells between storms as well. However, saying all that, there are actions that the county and our partners can take now and in the coming years to minimize the scale and the impact of climate change that we're seeing. So I'll give an overview of our climate roadmap, and this plan is really to tackle those impacts that we're seeing of climate change. The vision of our climate roadmap is to ensure a healthy, equitable, prosperous, and climate-friendly Santa Clara County through regional climate collaboration and robust action. And I want to acknowledge that many of the cities in our county have already adopted climate action plans. So really what the key goals of our roadmap is to prioritize action in unincorporated areas of the county, and also to help facilitate countywide partnerships to further encourage sustainable and resilient communities. We developed these goals for the plan with stakeholder input throughout the process, and I'll just go over them briefly. There's goals around all electric, efficient, and resilient buildings, around prioritizing housing affordability, creating a transportation system that's safe, reliable, and low emissions, supporting and maintaining our natural environment, and transitioning to green jobs and a green economy. And what I want to emphasize here is that it's critical to not only tackle climate change, but to make sure there's other benefits along the way as well, sustaining our natural resources, promoting our health and well-being, and our economy. So wanted to share where we're at in the process of developing our climate roadmap. I'll go into detail on some of these items, but we started the process by conducting a community greenhouse gas emissions inventory and setting emissions targets. We also set a vision and goals that I just went over. And then all of those helped us draft strategies, essentially. Those strategies were refined based on stakeholder input. We updated them. And now we're in the process of conducting an additional round of community engagement on those strategies, which will lead us to a final set of strategies to include in our roadmap. So in terms of existing conditions, what does it look like in the county right now? We conducted what's called a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which evaluates the emissions from a number of different categories that you see here. Those are electricity, natural gas, on-road transportation, that's like cars and trucks, off-road equipment, waste, and then water and wastewater. And we included these categories here because the county has some level of control or influence over them. We conducted an inventory looking at countywide, which is the figure on the left, and then also looking at just unincorporated county. And the data that we used was a couple years old from 2017. So what you can see here is that the greatest source of emissions countywide is from on-road transportation. And then looking at just unincorporated county, the biggest source of emissions is natural gas. But to note, the unincorporated county emissions, they make up just 3.7% of the countywide emissions, so it's a much smaller subset. The county also set a carbon neutrality target for 2035. And I can walk you through what you're seeing on the screen here since there's a lot going on. So the 2017 emissions that I mentioned, that's that gray dotted line here. And this is all for just the unincorporated county areas. The business as usual forecast, that's this dark blue line up top. That shows how our emissions will increase if we don't implement any additional climate programs. Then the adjusted forecast, that's this line in light blue. That shows that some emissions will be decreased based on statewide programs. And then the area in light orange, this shows the level of emissions that need to be reduced by the county in order to reach our 2030 and 2035 targets. Just to note, the state of California has established a carbon neutrality target by 2045. However, there is some legislation that's trying to make that happen a little faster. And so we do understand it will be challenging to meet our 2035 and our 2030 targets, but we know we need to take urgent action to limit the impacts of climate change, and being bold could help us get there faster. We also know a lot could change before 2035, and the hope is that new technologies and new processes are developed before then that can help us meet that target. And just to note, this carbon neutrality target, it's for the unincorporated county areas. We're not setting a target countywide just yet, but we're hoping to work with all the cities and other partners to strive towards carbon neutrality countywide. As part of the climate roadmap, we're also developing what we're calling a climate action map tool. This is going to be an online tool that's publicly available, and it will map out all the organizations working on climate action and climate adaptation in the county, what topic areas they're focusing on, and what their contact information is. And the goal is that this really helps facilitate collaboration, so you can reach out to other organizations working on similar goals. We sent out surveys last year to collect that information, and we're currently building out the tool. We had about 70 organizations complete the survey, including all the cities, universities in the county, community organizations, and even private companies like Microsoft and eBay. And throughout our process, we've conducted outreach and engagement, and will continue to do so, as I mentioned. We sent out a survey last year to cities, other public agencies, and community organizations, as I mentioned. We conducted listening sessions last year with community members representing various sectors such as agriculture, food access, transportation, the business community. We posted a virtual visioning wall on our website asking for community members to share what their vision is for a climate-friendly county, and we received over 100 comments. We've presented on the project to many organizations, including the Food System Alliance, the San Martin Neighborhood Alliance, and the South County United for Health Leadership. We've awarded mini grants to 3 different community-based organizations to help us target outreach to hard-to-reach audiences. And then lastly, we're using an online tool called Consider It, which I briefly mentioned, and that's what we're using to get feedback on our draft actions. So just to reiterate where we're at in developing our greenhouse gas emissions reduction strategies for the project. We developed that initial set of strategies with our in-house, our project team essentially. We conducted outreach and stakeholder interviews to refine those strategies. And now we're getting feedback on the final set of draft strategies, which we'll include in our roadmap. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to actually showing you what our Consider It tool looks like and giving you a little tutorial of how you can use it. So you can actually vote on these strategies during this meeting today, and I'll walk you through that. So there's a QR code here. If you'd like to join on your cell phone, you can just use your camera app, scan that QR code, and that'll take you to the website. Or if it might be easier for you to do this on your computer itself, you can just enter this URL. It's just climateroadmap.consider.it. So I'm going to give you a minute here to join. I'll leave this up for a minute or so. Okay. People maybe just like show a thumbs up if you're on it. Okay, it looks like some people are still navigating, but some people are there. And Larry, you raised your hand. Did you have a question?
Nope, did you want us to actually create accounts on here? That's the only way to participate?
Okay, so let me go to, yes. I'm gonna go to the next slide here. So you do have to create an account to participate, but it's totally free. And all you need to do is enter your name, your email address, and a password. So it's fairly simple. So you I would recommend creating an account. And then I'll walk you through it. I'll share my screen with it, but there's just different tabs for different sectors. So we'll go through those. And it's really simple. All you do is essentially like drag a slider to say whether you support or oppose a strategy. Another thing to note is that all opinions are anonymous to the public, so we won't see your name or anything like that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen and then I'll navigate out to the actual website. Is anyone having issues joining? Okay, not hearing anything. That's a good thing. Let me reshare my screen with the website. Okay, and then speak up again, of course, if you have issues or if you have comments or questions on these strategies. But what I figured I would do is just walk through the strategies, and as I'm going over them, feel free to vote on them yourself. So there's a couple different sectors that we've included. The first is buildings, and we also have transportation, waste and water, and agriculture. So I'm just going to go through one by one what our strategies are. The first is a gas shutoff. So set a goal to shut off natural gas across the county where feasible and create a regional plan to phase the shutoff. The reason that we are focusing on setting a gas shutoff date is because our electricity supply from Silicon Valley Clean Energy and from other energy providers as well, like San Jose Clean Energy, has little to no greenhouse gas emissions. And so we're really trying to encourage the switch from using natural gas in our homes to using electricity for our appliances. And so that's why we included this strategy here. And if I need to go like slower or faster, just let me know. This is the first time we're doing this considerate walkthrough, so just let me know. Speak up if I'm going too fast. The next strategy is around electrification as well. Develop policies to phase out installation of gas appliances for space heating, water heating, and cooking, starting in 2024 in the unincorporated county, and require that electric appliances be installed instead. So this is essentially like a mandate that the county would pass that would only apply to buildings in unincorporated county. However, what we do, the cities could look to do as well. Okay. This next one gets at funding. So work with Breann, that's the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. They provide different energy efficiency programs throughout the Bay Area. And then also work with local utility partners. Like I mentioned, SBCE, that's Silicon Valley Clean Energy. That's our clean energy provider. PG&E, San Jose Clean Energy, and others to provide financial incentives for electric appliances for homeowners and building owners, specifically targeting low-income individuals. And the reason we put this here is because sometimes it is more expensive upfront to install an electric appliances. And so we're aware that for some folks, they may not be able to afford that. They may only be able to afford the natural gas option. So we want to make it more feasible for them to do an upgrade with an electric appliance. Okay, I'm moving on. Partner with local utility providers and local farm worker associations to create or expand building energy efficiency improvement programs specifically for farm worker housing in the unincorporated county. We know that this is an area that needs a little bit more support, and so that's why we're including it as a focus area. Okay. Move on. Community education. Support Breann. As I mentioned, that's the Bay Area Regional Energy Network. They provide energy efficiency programs to develop a countywide electrification concierge service or another equivalent customized informational and tech assistance program to support the community in replacing gas appliances with electric alternatives. The impetus for this year is folks need help figuring out what their options are. You know, when your furnace goes out, sometimes the first thing you do might be to go to a Home Depot, see what's there. And so we're really looking to have a hotline or a website where someone can walk you through, like, what are the electric alternatives for your appliance, where you might find rebates, who can install this for you, really just someone to step-by-step walk you through the whole process. Okay, I'm gonna move along. Our last one under buildings is workforce training. Support partners, such as those clean energy providers, PG&E, the Tech Clean California program, trade unions, to expand existing workforce training efforts to a countywide electrification training program that engages local contractors and other relevant professionals. Really, this is getting at, you know, the contractors are sometimes your first point of contact when you're switching out an appliance or buying a new appliance. And we want to give them the tools to understand the electric appliances and the alternatives, and really be able to educate residents on what their options are. Okay, so let me pause there. Are folks able to vote, and is the pace going well? If so, maybe give a thumbs up. If it's going too fast, you're having issues, maybe like a thumbs down.
Yeah, I'm having trouble doing it on my phone, but you know.
Yeah, same thing with me, Briann. The phone's a little difficult to just slide the bar across.
Yeah.
Just as a note, yeah.
Okay, maybe what I can do is put the URL in the chat, and if you want, you can use your computer instead.
It's super easy on the computer. I'm doing it on a different screen. But Breann, I did have a question. I mean, as you walk through each of these, it's really easy to just slide it over and say, yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. But I don't have any way of saying, what's the cost to that compared to the cost to something else? Is there what's the ROI on this one category compared to the ROI on another category? But is that the idea at this point, to just say, yeah, these are all great ideas, now we're going to flesh them out and then go back through later on and say the ROI on these different things might be good, might be bad?
Yeah, that's a great question. Once we do have a list of the strategies that folks seem to have more support on, what we want to do is go through and see what the actual emissions reduction potential is, like how much emissions will they actually reduce and what the cost might be, to figure out where we might get the most bang for our buck. And when we were setting this up, I was, you know, conflicted because you can set up the scales as like opposed support like we have here, or you can set them up as like, this is a priority or this is not a priority. And so I was also really interested in that information, because at some point we do have to prioritize. But yeah, for now, we're just trying to figure out like which ones folks might be in more support of. And then we'll go through and do that analysis of like the cost benefit. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, it does. But and as I can see on each one of these, it's super easy to just say support, 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 and that's where all of, you know, your markers are right now, are supporting each and every one of these, because we don't have any details about what they mean. They all sound, yeah, of course, that's a great idea, but we know you can't do everything, and we know that resources are going to be limited, and we have no idea whether any of them are going to make a difference or not. So sort of that next pass through, my guess is everything's going to be support, and that next pass through about details is going to be probably the more important part on this process.
Yeah. And it's good to keep in mind that we may want to do an additional round of outreach once we do have that information of like what the cost is and what the impact is. Thanks.
Yeah, Breann, I would weigh in with Larry as well. I think this is going to give you a general direction and feel, but without the cost equation to that, it's really going to be hard to determine as a resident really what it means to us, and more importantly, the county and the city. So I think you may need to rethink about circling back after those cost analyses are done and presented back to the stakeholders.
Thank you. I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, well, I put the URL in the chat. So if you were having issues using your phone, I would recommend trying your computer instead.
And Breann,
on to the next.
Breann, real quick on the phone, I was noticing that if you have it left on all options, then it really is almost impossible to do anything. But if you move it over to just you, then it's a little easier to do on the phone.
Thank you. Yes, and I think that's what you're talking about, like all opinions are just you here.
Right. So if you click over to just you on the phone, then you can drag it and it doesn't move the whole screen.
Thanks, Lori. Okay. I'm going to move on to transportation and give you a sense of our strategies. There's 3 categories that we included: active and public transportation, electric vehicles, and driving disincentives. So I'll go through. The first under active and public transportation is around commuter benefits, requiring large employers throughout the county to offer additional incentives to shift employee commutes away from fossil fuel powered vehicles beyond what's currently required by BACMED's Bay Area Commuter Benefits Program. And you can also actually click on each strategy here, and we give a little bit more detail for some of them. But BACMED already has a commuter benefits program. It requires large employers to offer essentially one benefit to employees, and we're thinking of expanding that program, so they need to offer more benefits. Okay, next is Bikeway Connections. Identify opportunities and facilitate stakeholder discussions to connect the countywide trails network to public transit for easier access at the beginning and end of bus and train routes. So this is getting at making it easier for the opportunity to avoid using a car for your whole trip. So say biking to the train, taking the train, and then biking to your destination from there. Next strategy is to provide access to secure bike parking at key destinations. Sometimes that's an obstacle for folks to ride their bike. They don't want to be worried about a tire getting stolen off their bike or their entire bike getting stolen. So bike parking that's secure is really key. Next is faster transit. So support VTA in providing faster, more frequent, and reliable public transit routes throughout the county. A couple ways you could do this. You can move bus routes to expressways where feasible, provide priority to buses on streets. And then of course we want to work with the cities. So this is done countywide. And really we've included this action because what we've heard is the key barrier to taking public transit is that it's too slow. Faster to drive in your car, our time is limited, and so people end up driving. So we're really thinking about how we can make public transit the faster option. The next strategy is an e-bike share program. So developing a countywide electric bike or electric scooter share program that connects to other transit options in the county to enhance countywide micromobility. And when you have an e-bike or an e-scooter, you have the opportunity to go a little bit farther than you would just with a regular bike or scooter. And so that's really why we're thinking about this program. Okay, and transit access. Require last mile shared mobility options at public transit stations and large commercial sites, like large employers. And the last mile, that's referring to the distance from the transit station to wherever you're trying to go, your work, grocery store, etc. And that's often the hardest part of the trip. And sometimes it's too far to walk there. And so that's why we're thinking about there needs to be another option like a bike, a shuttle, somewhere to get you to your final destination. And then lastly, under this public transportation category, or active transportation, we have funding. Coordinate with the cities to fund public transit through a countywide property tax, a rideshare tax, and partnerships with large tech companies. So we know these changes will not be cheap to make, so looking at how can we fund these upgrades. Okay, I'm going to move on to electric vehicles. The first one is around EV charger installations. Support the installation of new EV chargers by providing education, financing, and tech support, especially in low-income communities, multifamily housing, and rural areas. And then also work to introduce and align requirements for EV infrastructure at existing multifamily housing. So kind of a chicken or the egg situation. You know, we need those EV chargers to have more people purchasing and driving EVs throughout the county. But sometimes people are tentative to buy an electric vehicle if they don't have the charging infrastructure available at their residence. And so that's why we really want to focus on multifamily housing because it's not as easy as one tenant deciding if they want an EV charger. And then we also wanted to focus on rural areas. We know that public transit is going to be really tricky in the rural areas of the county. And so instead of focusing on public transit, or in addition to focusing on that, a focus on encouraging people to drive electric vehicles and having the charging infrastructure could be really helpful. Okay, moving on, commercial EV chargers. So install commercial grade charging infrastructure along major commercial corridors using a variety of funding sources. This is really to have charging infrastructure for those like commercial grade vehicles. Okay. Next is around funding. Work with local tech companies and other large local employers to develop a fund that provides financial incentives for local community members to buy EVs. There's already some rebates out there for EVs, but sometimes that's not enough for folks that can't afford to buy a brand new vehicle. And so we're thinking about ways to help incentivize that. Okay. And then this next one is also around funding. Specifically, we mentioned working with county partners and others to complement and exceed the existing clean vehicle rebate program. And this could include working with dealerships to provide countywide discounts on EVs as well. Okay, and next is also around commercial electric vehicles. Identify and target owners and operators of large vehicle fleets to accelerate their transition to electric vehicles. So not only do we want to shift, an individual's car to an electric vehicle, but also those commercial fleets throughout the county. Okay, and then lastly, under electric vehicles, support electric car share companies, such as there's a company called GigCar, and expanding to residential areas of unincorporated county, and support the cities to do the same. So there's some electric car share companies that are in places like San Francisco and Oakland, but they haven't made their way down to Santa Clara County yet. So we're thinking about ways to bring those programs down here. Okay, I'm going to move on to the last transportation category, and that's driving disincentives. And speak up if you have any questions too, feel free to stop me. Okay, so first one is to prioritize public transit and active transportation over single occupancy vehicles for all new or enhanced roadway projects. So this is really when the county is doing upgrades or new road projects to make sure that those are designed in a way that is allowing for public transit and for bikes and walking. There's sidewalks and bike lanes, etc. Next one is to reduce parking requirements and increase public transit and active transportation access for new development and redevelopment, make driving to and parking at new destinations less attractive. Really, we want to make public transit and active transportation the easiest options for people. And then lastly here, we have congestion fees, facilitate and develop a regional equitable approach to introducing fees to drive in congested areas of the county. Okay. That's transportation. I know there's a lot there. Any questions before I move on about those transportation strategies?
I've got general questions, but I'll wait till the end.
Okay.
I have one. I
And
raised my
Mikey-
hand, but I guess you didn't see it.
Go ahead.
Apartment dwellers, condo dwellers, I didn't see that mentioned at all in the electrification, and a growing percentage of our residents don't live, in a single family home or a place with a garage, and access to charging there. I mean, the most convenient way to charge is overnight, presuming you have a day job. So I don't see that mentioned anywhere. And I also don't see mentioned planning strategies designed to reduce, when possible, the distance between where you sleep and where you work or go to school. If we didn't keep increasing the distance between where people sleep and where people work, we wouldn't have as much of a transportation problem to solve. And yet I never see that aspect of what we do discussed. Like here in Morgan Hill, we have a lot of people that live here that have to commute for a job. More jobs here would get people off the road. And in Palo Alto or Sunnyvale, you have a lot of people working, but not enough places for them to live. If they could live down the street from work, then biking or e-biking is useful. So I think that needs to be included in the discussion of strategies.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Yes, you're right. We don't have a strategy about like the housing affordability, housing crisis issue. So that's a good point. In terms of condo dwellers or apartment dwellers, we do have that under electric vehicles here, supporting the installation of new EV chargers by providing education, financing, and tech support. And we call it multifamily housing. So I totally agree. People need a place to charge overnight at their residence.
I mean, you
So
could address it,
that's-
for example, when you get a permit to build your new 100-unit apartment complex, you have to also put in 100 chargers. So there are zoning requirements. There are a whole lot. In fact, you talk about that implicitly in the getting rid of natural gas through requirements. And here you're just talking about support or encourage or incentivize, which gets you to like 10%.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and what we haven't called out is that a lot of cities in this county have passed REACH codes, which are codes that go above and beyond the California building code requirements for new construction. And those include, so the building code already requires some EV charging spaces for new multifamily housing, but the REACH codes reach above and beyond that and require more EV charging spaces. That's something that we have done that we haven't called out here. And thank you for raising that, because we could go above and beyond that. Okay, I saw some other folks raise their hands.
Brian Sullivan has his hand up.
Brian?
Thanks.
Yeah, my question is a kind of a yin and a yang of EV stations and trying to get, gas guzzling cars off the road. When you reduce parking in apartment complexes and those other places, people are going to find other places to park. Most people have two cars, in an apartment, two people living there. And it's just going to cause more problems when you reduce that parking on site. So you got to be careful about that, I think, in some way. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Brian. I agree. It's which one do you do first? How do you do them at the same time? Okay. Were there any other hands up? I don't see any. I'm going to move on to the last couple categories, and these are shorter, so hopefully be easier to get through. There's waste and water, and then agriculture. So the first one here under water is to partner with Valley Water to provide financial incentives for residential, commercial, and agricultural customers to reduce their water usage throughout the county. Valley Water already does have some programs, but more is needed, especially because we've seen drought-like conditions almost every year now. Okay, and the next is around composting. Monitor, enforce mandatory residential and commercial organic waste collection and composting, and provide multilingual education for all customers, and to coordinate with Joint Venture Silicon Valley to enforce edible food recovery for businesses. Like I said, if you click on the action, you can read a little bit more. And this one is specifically around SB 1383. That's state legislation that requires compost collection programs. And the county is working to enforce those requirements and then to provide education as well for residents. Okay, and the last one here is around plastic reduction. Require foodware accessories by request only and educate customers in food facilities. Explore potential future requirements such as requiring reusables for dine-in restaurants and bans on non-compostable single-use foodware accessories. And again, if you click here, there's state legislation, AB 1276. This was requiring plastic straws upon request only, and it's expanded now to include other single-use food accessories as well. Straws, stirs upon request only. Okay. And then the last tab is agriculture. One is short as well. First, strategies around land conservation, to collaborate with farmers and local public agencies to preserve prime farmland and rangeland in the county through agricultural conservation easements. And one of the reasons, there's so many benefits to conserving farmland and rangeland, but one of the reasons related to climate is if those areas become developed, they can emit up to 70 times more greenhouse gas emissions than if they were kept as working ag land. So that's something we're really thinking about. Okay, and then lastly, to expand the county's agricultural resilience incentive program, which provides funding to ag property owners to implement healthy soil practices that sequester carbon. And sequestering carbon really means pulling those emissions out of the air. And that's the last strategy here. I'm gonna switch my screen share again. So before I do that, let me pause and so I can see your faces. I know that was a lot of information about our strategies. Any other questions or comments or big picture feedback you want to share?
So maybe we could focus a little bit on questions about this process and some of the ideas. What is the way, Breann, that we can best submit other ideas that aren't included in here, like what John Horner just talked about, and perhaps what I think others might want to throw ideas out here, so that we use our time most effectively?
So in terms of submitting new ideas, you can actually do that under in the Consider It tool as well. Let me share my screen again so I can show you how to do that. Okay. So if your idea is, say, related to land conservation, you can just choose one of the strategies in there, click on it, and then you can, let's see, there is a way to add like you can add, basically you could share your opinion and say, you know, we're missing a strategy or we're missing considering, you know, some other idea, and you can add your opinion there.
Okay.
I think that may be the best way to add a new idea in here.
Okay, so everyone can go in and click on those and add more ideas or pros and cons on those. So let's jump in and start asking Breann some questions about this. Marby, you've been waiting patiently. Go for it.
Oh, thank you. I've been waiting that long. So, and thanks for the presentation. I'm wondering, I'm assuming other counties here in the Bay Area and surrounding our county are taking on these same kind of initiatives. Is that the case, to your knowledge?
Yeah. Yes. So I did mention like the cities have their own climate action plans, but other counties throughout the Bay Area, they're going through a similar process as well, or some of them already have climate action plans developed.
Is it 100% of counties here in the Bay Area? Because I mean, I think the one thing that at least I've heard over the years is we talk about, you know, working on climate initiatives that, you know, it's all for naught if there's some party out there that's not taking this on. It's not like, you know, it's gonna, if just we're doing it, that it's going to do anything. We need to kind of have everybody. And so is that the case?
I can't say for sure that 100% of counties have climate action plans. I'm not tracking that as closely. What we're focusing on is what all the other cities in our county are doing, so we can work together and take some countywide action. So I have a better sense of what the cities are doing. Other counties in the Bay Area, I don't have, I can't say for certain that like 100% of them are.
Okay. I mean, and I guess I'm curious to how that affects the whole plan if there's not complete buy-in, because, but that's a separate question. And then the other question I had is, I think it said as part of the title of this was sort of the time frame you're looking to do this in.
Yes, the time frame. I didn't go over that in too much detail. So we're hoping to have the plan finalized by the end of this calendar year, the end of 2022.
And implemented by when?
We have goals set for 2030 and 2035. So like I mentioned, our goal is to achieve carbon neutrality by 2035. So that means reduce all emissions, or the ones that we can't reduce, to offset them by carbon sequestration.
And again, one more quick question. And I know probably not your area to question you about is, do we think we're going to have an electrical grid in California that's going to be able to support all this? Because I think that's always been the big issue, is that's all these ideas are fine and great, but can it be supported without serious brown?
That is a big concern.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big concern that we hear, especially like for folks living in rural areas too.
Exactly.
Because we've experienced more power outages. And I'm not an expert on this, but folks have been talking to PG&E, and PG&E essentially has an obligation to provide the electrical grid services that we need. So I know just because they have an obligation doesn't mean they can implement that easily, but it sounds like there are conversations and they're, you know, on board to support this work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Nick.
First, Breann, thank you for the presentation. I'm just curious, is the county thinking about doing a crosswalk with all the various city initiatives that are in place? We take a look at how those common threads are pulled together. I think it goes back to Marby's question, is to ensure that we've got continuity across at least our county within our cities. That may be helpful to kind of, so the net that you've casted is fairly wide right now as far as strategies, and to be able to narrow that down, it may be a good indicator for each one of the cities within the county of Santa Clara to understand their specific alignment to the overall roadmap. That may help, you know, kind of refocus the efforts going forward. And then from that perspective, what are the dependencies that get us to 2030 or 2035 based on that return on value? So I guess I would encourage the county to be looking at that as it relates to this final piece of community input before decisions can be made as far as strategies. It's just a consideration just based on what I'm hearing from the presentation. And Larry, we do have till 9:30. We want to make sure that we get Brittney on board with that as well. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So just a time check for everyone. We're going to go till 9:30 this morning because we want to hear from Brittney on the downtown issues. So we'll keep going with some questions here for the next about 8 minutes, and then we're going to move into our other reports. John, I have your hand up, and Armando, I think you had your hand up at one point. So let's go, John, and then Armando.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate the effort in the presentation. This is the issue of our time. So my questions, please take in that spirit. But I'm wondering, in an early slide, you had a, do nothing, do something, do a lot kind of a graphic. And then we had a lot of details. Well, do you support A, B, C, or D? And my wondering is, what's included in those here, if we do all the things, like, for example, encouraging e-bikes, what sliver of that is it? Are those two things tied together, or is one just kind of a big picture goal and then the other is a laundry list of ideas? I'm not sure how those two aspects connect.
Yeah, that's a good question, John. I didn't show this, but we have a tool on the back end that essentially helps us see for which types of actions, how much emissions will we be able to reduce. So we're using that to see like which areas do we need to focus on. And we know that under the e-bike example you gave, transportation is a huge category of our emissions. So we know that in order to achieve our goals, we essentially need to convert a certain amount of miles driven by car to public transportation trips or biking or walking. So we're keeping that in mind when we're putting together this list of all the potential strategies, knowing that I think our estimate was like we need to shift 10% of vehicle miles traveled by car to public transit. And we need to shift 10% of vehicle miles traveled by car to biking or walking. So that's kind of how we're deciding like what category of strategies to include. I don't know if that answers your question, John.
Yeah, it's going to be the work of decades, but tying those two together, like decades ago, we love rail, let's build light rail. But I think if you analyze ridership, versus capital invested, and environmental impact of building and maintaining the thing versus how many car trips you're actually getting off the road, maybe it's not as effective as some other things, which I think is where the electric buses on expressways plan came from. But it's really important when we do these public exercises. It's easy to end up with a laundry list. It's hard to figure out, to Larry's question early on, where do you get the bang for the buck? And I thought his question was really important, that even as we're evaluating, do I love this thing? It's like, yeah, well, what's the result for the investment? That's really important. So I'm kind of coming back and pinning Larry's first comment again through a different lens.
Okay, yes, thank you for clarifying that. And like I said, the next step of this process will be looking at, for all of these different strategies, what is the potential greenhouse gas emissions reduction and what's the cost, and focusing on the ones that are going to make the most impact. However, saying that, there are other strategies that may not have as big of a greenhouse gas emissions reduction, but they make our communities more bikeable, more walkable, more livable, more enjoyable. So we are also trying to balance that of emissions reductions are very important, and it's also important to make our communities better places to live and work.
Great, thanks. Armando, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Larry. Hi, Breann. Thank you very much for the presentation. I really enjoyed it. I have a question regarding the emission control and how it affects the environment. And my understanding is most of the emission comes from slow cars backed up in traffic and expressways, highways, and freeways. And I like the plan. It looks good. How are we going to do something in parallel to reduce the emissions that we could reduce the next 1 or 2 years by expanding our expressways or freeways? Has any thought been given to that, or is everything going to go to this program?
Yeah, Armando, that is a great question. And the county has a roads and airport department, and they're responsible for like managing traffic on our expressways. And we've talked to them a little bit about it. And some of these ideas are actually like in conflict with one another, because like you said, a lot of the emissions come from idling cars or cars going slowly. However, we've talked about how we want to prioritize public transit. So that means that maybe like a VTA light rail would have priority at an intersection, which means the cars would be then idling. They'd be stopped waiting for that light rail to pass. And so it is tricky to balance like those two goals of prioritizing public transit, prioritizing walking at intersections versus getting cars to move quickly on the expressways. So that's something we've been talking with our roads and airport department on, is how do we balance those two things? I don't think we have a great answer yet, but we know we need to consider both ideas because they're both important.
Great. Thank you for that, Breann.
Okay, I'm going to take chair's privilege here and make some comments, ask some questions, and then wrap us up. First, thanks so much, Breann. A couple of folks have commented about how important this work is, and really the issue of our time. So it's important that we do this. One thing that I'd like to just point out, and we always say this to the county, is keep in mind that there are differences in our county. And as I'm answering these questions, I'm thinking about them from the perspective of South County. And I can only imagine that someone from North County is answering it almost differently than I am because of the way that our county is designed. And maybe the unincorporated county can, actually achieve some benefits that are great for Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy. But the way that we think about public transportation, we have to start thinking about it differently in our county, and continuing to focus more resources on light rail. To John Horner's question, when I was on the VTA board, every mile of light rail costs the operating budget of the VTA $1 million. That's not sustainable, and it will never get to South County. For me to support public transportation, I need a better plan for how we're going to use it in South County, as opposed to just the dense parts of downtown San Jose and North County. And so I think as we consider all of these issues, we need to think about how our county is different in different ways, and that South County, compared to the rest of the county, might be considered somewhat differently. Marby's point is a really good one, that sustainability and climate is a worldwide issue. And if Morgan Hill is to think about it, if the county is to think about it, we need to be thinking about it regionally as well. We know that most of our emissions are transportation related, and that a good share of transportation in Santa Clara County starts outside Santa Clara County every day and comes into the county. So how are we connecting what we're doing to the counties around us and where people are coming from and commuting to? And last two things, if you could send your presentation that you gave to us this morning to Lori so that Lori can send it out to all of us, that'd be super helpful. And I'd love to invite you to come back and keep talking to us about the next steps. And Nick, maybe we can think about a way that it's not just this committee, but we open up to everyone, because these are such important issues for everyone in the chamber and everyone throughout South County, that we can host something for Breann to come back in the next steps. And as we talk about some more of the details and how we get into how Morgan Hill, Gilroy, South County really talks about and works with these issues and works with the county. Because I really believe that the way that we're going to attack this and really make some difference, Morgan Hill puts its climate action plan together, Gilroy puts its together, but we're going to need some leadership from the county to coordinate all of these things together and really organize and lead all the cities in this effort together in order to get to some of these goals that both the state has set for us and now that the county wants to set as well by 2030. They're goals that we need to all embrace, and we're going to need some regional leadership to get there. And I think the county is the right body to do that. So again, thanks so much, Breann. Thanks everyone. This was an awesome conversation. Nick, you took yourself off mute. I think you wanted to say something real quick.
No, I just wanted to say again, thanks, Breann, for the presentation and the time. And I do love that thought, Larry. Maybe we can work with our colleagues at the city, conduct a town forum. And with that, I may put Councilman McKay a little bit on the spot, but it would be good to be thinking about if we can have that opportunity for a town forum, is how then our city of Morgan Hill is aligning to the potential priorities going forward, then how that looks and feels as it represents us within the region itself. So I think it's a great idea, and Breann, we can work on that and stay in contact with you to see if we can pull that together. Thanks, Larry.
Great.
Thank you so much. Great comments and questions. I really appreciate you inviting me here. So what I'm going to do is put my email address in the chat and then the project website too. You can always reach out if you have questions that come up later.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Breann. We really appreciate you reaching out to us and spending some time with us this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. Okay, we're going to switch gears here and talk about downtown and parklets and some of the great work that our very own Brittney Sherman has been working on with the city. So Brittney, I'm going to hand it to you. I'm not sure how you want to do this, but it's all yours. And know you're with a friendly group.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Brittney Sherman, City of Morgan Hill Economic Development Coordinator. I do have a presentation and Lori's given me the access, so I'll share that in just a moment. Just wanted to thank you all for giving me the time today. This will be the first time anybody outside of the city is seeing the presentation, so thank you for allowing me to give me the platform to present and connect with all of you and receive feedback, because that's really what we're here for today. And now let me go ahead and share. And see. Can everyone see that? Good. Yep. All right. Great. All right. Well, in the next couple minutes, we're going to talk about the Semi-Permanent Parklet Program. As many of you know, I joined the city back in November of last year, and the last several months I have been working on connecting with other cities and seeing kind of how they're transitioning from the pandemic to the post-pandemic outdoor dining and what that looks like and how they're transitioning their parklet programs through to the next phase. So a lot of this is based off of those conversations, best practices, and what we think will work well in Morgan Hill. Right. Okay, so here's just a quick overview of kind of where we've been, what programs we have, and what we're proposing. So in 2018, the city put together a Parklet Pilot Program. It was created to activate streets, promote walkability, reduce traffic, and increase the vibrancy in the downtown. It was created in 2018 and then extended in 2020 during the pandemic, again, to support outdoor dining for our restaurants. It's a 3-year program. During the time that it was first started in 2018, we received no applications for the program. To date, we have 4. In 2020, because of the pandemic, the city was very quick to respond and support our restaurants and outdoor dining and outdoor retail in creating what we call the Alfresco program. So that was created to support business viability and survivability during COVID-19. The city provided those orange safety barricades that we saw and are still out there today. They waived the encroachment permit fees. We have currently 7 Alfresco operators at this time. Now we're looking forward to transitioning both of those programs, both the Parklet Pilot and the Alfresco, combining them under a manual for outdoor dining. Within that manual will be a semi-permanent parklet program. So we're creating that to promote a more comprehensive outdoor dining program in a place, like I said, inside a 40-page manual where someone can go if they want to have some sort of outdoor dining for the restaurant. It's a 7-year program. It will provide an opportunity for long-term restaurant investment, and it's going to simplify and streamline outdoor guidelines, processes, and permitting. So here's kind of a look at what we have at this time. So we have 7 restaurants operating under the Alfresco dining program. We have 4 operating under the Pilot Parklet program. 2 of those that are operating under Alfresco are actually on private property. 25 downtown parking spaces are currently being used to support either the Alfresco or the Parklet Pilot restaurants. And we have more than 15 Sidewalk Cafe permits. And I'll kind of go into what the difference between the Parklet and the Sidewalk Cafe is in just a minute. And here on the left side is a picture of Yoked. On this side, we have a picture of OPA. And then down here is kind of a speculative dimensional design that we contracted AP&I to create. Okay, so here's a little bit of the timeline. So in 2018, as I said, we launched the Pilot Parklet program. In 2020, the Alfresco Outdoor Dining Program. In 2021, Alfresco Outdoor Dining Program was extended and is now set to expire at the end of this year, December 31st of 2022. January 19th, earlier this year, we went to City Council and they gave us direction to develop the Semi-Permanent Parklet Program. Today, I'm presenting the Chamber of Commerce Economic Development team. Next week, I'll be presenting to the Downtown Association during their Board of Directors meeting. We are going to present this program and the feedback that we're compiling and going to integrate into it from these 2 meetings to City Council on May 4th. We're hoping to implement the Semi-Permanent Parklet Program on June 1st, and then looking to also launch the grant program that works alongside that on July 1st. All right, so let's get a little bit more into kind of the details of the program. So the overarching portion of this is that we've created an outdoor dining manual. It's 40 pages. What it's meant to do is condense all current outdoor dining programs into one comprehensive manual to provide citywide guidance and standards for outdoor dining on both the private property and the public right-of-way. We provide and enforce standards to ensure all parklet designs are based on industry and professional standards for safety, accessibility, and constructability. So what is the definition of a parklet? A parklet's an extension of the sidewalk that repurposes street parking spaces for the creation of public space. A parklet activates the street by replacing one or more on-street parking spaces with pedestrian-oriented amenities such as seating, dining, and/or elements of play. They create guidelines, standards, and processes for outdoor dining, and a formally dedicated parking stall is what we're solving with the manual and with this program. Who is eligible? Either existing and future parklet operators are encouraged to apply. They do have to receive property owner approval, and the number of parking spaces within their dimensional footprint is limited to each individual restaurant's storefront or footprint. So either the front of their storefront, or if they're utilizing a side street or a back, it just has to stay within the area space of their business. All right, the length of the Parklet program, we are proposing 7 years. And I have conducted some outreach to some of the existing parklet operators and those that have an interest in possibly setting up a parklet in the future. Their concern was the cost of the investment in creating the parklet. So of course, through those conversations, we kind of landed in this 7-year time frame of, if I make this investment, which is anywhere from $40,000 to $90,000 realistically to build out this parklet, it's going to take me a number of years to recoup that cost. And so 7 years is what we're proposing at this point. And again, the launch date we're proposing is June 1st. Parklet deadlines. All completed applications for either compliancy of your existing parklet or the creation of a new parklet will be due October 1st. Now, if you have an existing parklet, you decide you don't want to participate in the program anymore, you will have to deconstruct your non-compliant parklet by January 31st of 2023. If you decide to move forward with either bringing your existing parklet into compliance or submitting designs for a new parklet, those designs and the compliancy must be completed by June 1st of 2023. Parklet designs. We have 2 different options for parklet designs. As many of you have been following this for quite some time, AP&I is an architecture company that was contracted by the city many months back to kind of formulate these designs of what we'd like to see. And again, these are things that are based off of safety, accessibility, aesthetics. And so I have a picture here and then a picture on the second screen that you'll see. Also, we wanted to give parklet operators the ability to kind of go a DIY route. So if you had an idea already, or you had a design or a theme or a feel that you feel like works with your restaurant, that's great. We've provided multiple pages of general standard design requirements. And again, those are all meant to satisfy safety requirements and accessibility. Grant funding. So the grant program will allow a maximum of $5,000 per parklet, and we'll get into that in a little bit. The program is going to launch again July 1st, and the application deadline for the grant funding will be June 1st of next year. All right, here's a breakdown of the different types of dining and the permitting that will be required for each. So the first one is Public Sidewalk Cafe. It's an outdoor dining space located within the sidewalk area of the public right-of-way that's associated with an adjacent eating and drinking establishment. That will require an encroachment permit, and requires now an encroachment permit. It's $672. That's good for 3 years. We will also require, as I mentioned before, a letter of approval from the property owner and a dimensional site plan. And I'll show you a picture of kind of each of the different plans in just a minute. The next type of dining is going to be your public right-of-way parklet. So that's going to be an outdoor space within the public right-of-way that encroaches into a parking space and is adjacent to an eating and drinking establishment. That will again require the encroachment permit, $672. That will be good for 7 years. So the life of the parklet at this point, since the program is 7 years. We will also be implementing an annual rental fee. That will be $1,000 per year. However, recognizing that constructing the parklet is going to be a significant investment, we won't be implementing that fee until 2024. So we're waiving it in 2023. They will again need a letter of approval from the property owner, of course, a dimensional site plan. And then for these, we're also requiring a one-time upfront security deposit. And that's just in the event that there's forces outside of our ability to control that we might need to deconstruct the parklet. And so that security deposit is there for that. And of course, completely refundable at the end. And last but not least, we have a parklet in the private sector. So it's an outdoor space on private property that encroaches into a shopping center parking stall and is adjacent to an eating and drinking establishment. That will require an outdoor dining clearance permit, which is a one-time fee of $250. Now, I'll kind of show you some examples of this, but if your design is satisfied under the outdoor dining clearance permit, meaning it fits all of the general guideline standards that we have in the manual, requires very little oversight and review, you're fine with a dining clearance. Now, if you're going to build a structure, anything overhead, that's going to then kick that into the next level, which will require an administrative use permit, which would be a $1,500 one-time fee. So again, non-structure, outdoor dining clearance. If you're going to start building structures and overhead, then that's going to be an administrative use permit. All right, so here's some examples. So we have on the top left right here, so we have Maurizio's. We all know that, we all eat there. You can see here, these are those orange barricades I spoke about before that the city had implemented for the alfresco. On the top right here, you see Yoked. So that would be a private property sidewalk dining. Again, we don't cover private property sidewalk dining in the program. I just wanted to give this as a great example because Jim did a fabulous job building that out. Down here on the bottom left, we have Palmerinos. So that's a great example of sidewalk dining right here on the public right-of-way. And then here we have Creation, which is a parklet, again, with the orange barricades provided by the city here. And then this is outside of the downtown off of Main, but still on the public way. Okay, parklet design. Parklet operators, as I mentioned before, can select a design from the APNI kit of parks, or they are welcome to create their own parklet by following the standards outlined in the Semi-Permanent Parklet Program. All of the parklet designs are based on industry and professional standards for safety, accessibility, and constructability. As I mentioned before, in the manual, we have multiple pages that really go into detail on the design standards. Here's just some of the key points that we have in there. So we're addressing emergency response access, accessibility, maintenance, public utilities and drainage access, pedestrian and automobile clearance, safety mechanisms, fire safety, electrical, overhead covers, and heaters. Now, safety, of course, is number one priority, absolutely, with these, and has probably been the largest challenge that we've had because we want to make sure that whatever we're putting out there, it is safe for the community, is safe for the restaurant operators, is safe for the people that are driving through. So what we've landed on is if your parklet is located on a 4-lane road or a road that is 25 mile per hour speed or higher, we will require that you implement the cement K-rail. It's not in this picture here because we just made that decision. But you will be required to have a cement K-rail. Now, if you go the DIY route and you decide you have your own designs and everything, if you don't want to do the K-rail, then you're going to have to come up with some custom safety device that can withstand 1,600 pounds of impact. 1,600 pounds of impact if you're on a 4-lane road and or a road with 25 miles per hour speed or more. So what we're probably going to see is a lot of those cement K-rails, which is fine because they can be painted, they can be covered. That's safety-wise, that's the route we go for the 4-lane road. However, if you happen to be located on a 2-lane road and or a road that is less than 25 miles per hour. So this we're talking about, for example, let's say Ladera, they're on the side street, they're not on the 4-lane road, or Creation on the 2-lane road. We have pre-approved bollards that can withstand 500 pounds of impact. You can use that. You can opt to use the decorative K-rail, which is right here in the corner, or you can opt to sink these inside one of your planter boxes. So we know a lot of it is aesthetics, and if you're a parklet operator, you want it to kind of fit with the vibe of your restaurant. So This is what Los Gatos has done quite successfully, is they've taken these bollards, these 500-pound bollards, they've sunk them inside of a planter box. You can't tell the difference, and it achieves both the safety and the aesthetics. All right, now we're moving on to the grant program. So on January 19, 2022, the City Council approved $50,000 for the creation of a parklet financing program to help businesses recover expenses for existing parklet conversions and new parklet construction. Parklet funding will be issued to eligible applicants on a first-come, first-served basis through the grants. The grant timeline: the program is going to launch July 1st of this year, and the application deadline will be June 1st of next year. Eligibility: you can be an existing or a future parklet operator in the public right-of-way, or an existing or future parklet operator on the private property. Use of the funds: this is going to be a reimbursement for only the use of these funds to reimburse traffic safety components, for beautification landscaping, or construction architecture document fees. The maximum amount that any eligible parklet will receive is $5,000. And with that, I'm ready for questions.
All right, I'm sure we have a ton of them. So who wants to get us started? Nick, go for it.
Well, first, thank you, Brittney, for the presentation. As always, it's well thought out. I'm wondering if you can take us back to one of those first 2 or 3 slides that relates to some of the timing and the sequencing, so we can kind of soak that in a little bit. Obviously, we've got several, both restaurants and retail owners, that potentially, obviously, will look forward to see where this may fit. I think it's the slide you
this one?
Had up. No, keep going. One more.
Probably this one?
Yeah, this one there. As far as the parklet deadline, the completed applications are due by October of 2022. Is that a stop date, or is, I'm not sure I understand if that's kind of a no-go decision for parklet deadlines, or just kind of walk me through those deadlines one more time if you can.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. So like I said, we're hoping to launch June 1st. The manual will be launched, ready to go. It'll have a designated space on the website. We're encouraging all completed applications to come in October 1st. So we want the completed application, your dimensional site plans, your encroachment permit, anything that we need to take a look at that parklet and review it and approve it, basically. So that gives us as I mentioned before, anything under the alfresco program will actually expire December 31st. So we're trying to give, a little bit of that leeway, but so we understand that as we receive the applications, there's going to be some time where we need to review, and various departments have to review as well. So we're trying to build in a little bit of that leg room. So we don't say applications have to be due December 30th and then the whole program wipes December 31st.
Okay. And will there be an accelerated process then with the city to help review those applications, as well as some education and training prior to that? Obviously, there's an adjustment to how we may this may look and feel, so we're going to need some acceleration of that program, working with the city to ensure that all those completed applications can be done by October 1. So I'm wondering if there's a process in place from the city that will allow that to happen.
I'll raise my hand because all the applications will come to me first. And again, this has been creating this manual and getting the approval and the buy-in from the various different departments. I mean, everybody's seen this. We've all looked at it. We've all approved it. So if applications are coming in and they're aligning with, again, that 40-page manual, it's a very easy, this person looks at it, tick, 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 yes, then it moves, then it moves, then it moves. So it should be a very streamlined, easy process. Now, when you're adding things in, the DIY probably will take just a smidge longer because people are going to be kind of manipulating things to make it work for them. But I mean, unless you have something that's just wildly outside of the standard guidelines that really is going to take some time to vet through. Otherwise, it's a very clear, it starts here, it goes here, it moves to this person, and I'm the holder of that. So I'm kind of doing this through the process.
And the only other question I have, I'll open it up again for the group, is there a transition for the existing restaurants or retail stores that are using the sidewalk side of business today as far as the cost in the application process going forward? I think there was a slide midway through your presentation that talked about the 3 areas. For those that are using the sidewalk itself, for those that want to go into the street for a parklet, and for those for private areas. Is that a change in what we have existing in our process today? And if so, what's that difference?
Yeah, so I think you're talking about the public sidewalk cafe, right? Just the use of like tables, chairs, maybe some umbrellas on the sidewalk. Yeah. So right now, pre-pandemic, yes, you had to take an encroachment permit for that and pay this fee that we have here. The fees change a little bit every year, but relatively this fee here, and it was good for 3 years. During the pandemic, because the city just really wanted to help promote the survivability and recovery of the businesses, they just said, submit the application so we know and we can see everything that's going on, but we're not going to charge the fee. And that's still the way it is today. And that will be the way it continues through the end of the alfresco on December 31st of the end of this year. So if somebody, again, if somebody were to want to do a public sidewalk cafe and they pulled that pre-pandemic, it's the same process that they would have now. Yes.
All right, thank you. Larry, I'll open it up to the group as well.
Okay, great questions. Who else? I can't see everyone, but I don't see any hands raised.
Oh, sorry, Larry.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but Larry Ingram, you have to work with this stuff, and you have some in operation today. Do you have any thoughts, questions, comments?
No, I'm just trying to take it all in. We've been doing the sidewalk permit. We've been under that program for a number of years. That worked well for us. During the pandemic, Nick and I decided it would be advantageous to occupy that space between our buildings. And as I read the letter of your rules there, it said if we occupy a parking space, which I don't think our thing between us does occupy a parking space, so I'm not sure where we would fall in that or not. For the 3-year sidewalk permit, we've been doing that for a number of years. I don't recall that the landlord permission was required. Is that sort of an insurance thing or something? I think we had to prove we had insurance, but I don't think we had to get the landlord's permission to just add some seats out in front of our place. Is that a change, or was that there and I just am misremembering?
Let me double check that one, Larry, because I thought it was in the previous one. Previously, they also used to have a letter of approval from the Downtown Association. So a lot of different caveats that have kind of changed through the years, but I believe the property owner approval has been there, but I'll double check for you.
Yeah, okay. But Nick handles that center thing for us, so I'll defer to him on what needs to be done there.
Sure.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Other questions? Nick, your hand is back up.
Yeah, just a quick question, Brittney. The manual that you spoke to, is that available today for dissemination? If so, the chamber would be happy, obviously, to provide a link to that. Again, there's a lot of information that's being discussed this morning. We're all going to have to kind of soak on that. So the earlier, the better as far as disseminating the information would be helpful, and we'd be happy to put a link onto our website as well to help with that.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I'm just, we're putting some just fine-tune editing on it. And then I wanted to address it with this group to see if we wanted to add any additional components in. But the draft manual is for the most part ready to go. So I can pop that onto the Choose website just as a draft, and then everybody can take a look at it and vet through it.
That'd be great.
Hey, Brittney, back to the questions. One other question, a little bit off topic.
Sure, go for it.
What would be really beneficial for us is to have a couple of the places in front of our restaurant designated 15-minute parking. Just a simple sign would be helpful, not just for our restaurant, but any of the restaurants in the area that have to-go business that is increasingly in this day and age a larger percentage of our business. The parking structure is wonderful, but convenience for to go, just if the city could just a couple of 15-minute parkings would do wonders for our business.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. And I know you and I had already spoken about that a couple months ago. So I know the city is looking at doing some off-street Monterey short-term parking. And then we can definitely add that into the conversation, the on-street Monterey as well.
Great. Matt, did you want to jump in here?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Just want to thank you for the opportunity to let Brittney share this program. It's complicated in trying to get your arms. The city's trying to get its arms wrapped around the various type of outdoor dining, both the sidewalk dining, what's happening throughout the city in some of the shopping centers, in parking lots, and then obviously what's happening in mainly downtown with the parklets. And we're just trying to standardize the process. And candidly, economic development has taken the reins to kind of pull this out of the hands of other departments, so we can help control the business community's destiny around this. And Brittney's done a phenomenal job navigating between planning and engineering and building to kind of put a streamlined process in place. And I think once you see the manual, still in draft form, happy to share it with you, 40 pages, very detailed. I think you'll see that we've done a lot of homework. Now, with that said, building out new parklets and maintaining them is an expensive prospect for many businesses, and we understand that, and that's why we've moved to the 7-year permit approval process. So I think you'll be pleased with the final product, and just want to thank Brittney for her hard work. She, as I dubbed her, the queen of parklets when she joined the city. So I thank her for taking on what's really kind of a complicated process, both internally and then executing it externally. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. John Horner's got a question again.
Yeah, great. Well, first, thanks. You know, just I don't have a restaurant business. I'm glad not to have that responsibility. So the restaurateurs on here, thank you very much for feeding us and navigating all that. And I just think this is an excellent job the city has done and moving forward. I've watched what's going on in Carmel because our daughter still has a business there and they're going through this as well. I'm wondering about one other oddball use, Mohi Social, right? You know, that's outdoor dining in a space that a half-built building. So what happens with that? I can't imagine, you know, that in normal times that use would have been, you know, given normal permits. I think it was a great adaptation, but I'm just wondering kind of where does that go from here?
I'm gonna take that question. Let Brittney off the hook. You know, we almost made it through a meeting without somebody asking about Mohi. Almost.
Had a minute to go.
So actually, I think it's time to adjourn the meeting. No, look, they have to, Mohi Social, which operates really out of the Granada Theater. It's using that as its kitchen base, and then it's using the Alfresco and the Parklet program right now. And they're going to have to follow the same rules and apply for the permit application, the process, just like anybody else, which they're eligible to go do. But our focus continues as a city trying to figure out how do we get that hotel project completed, and trying to work with the property owner to figure out the funding mechanism and how you long-term get the hotel built. So, you know, if he may actually have to, towards the end of this year, we may encourage him, if we're not making progress on the hotel, to do a temporary use permit under the structure, and ask him to make that application process. So that's kind of where we're at, but our focus continues to be around safety and making sure, you know, parklets are safe and they look good and they're operating, along with obviously trying to figure out how to get the hotel to operate.
It's a very creative use of an unfinished building. I mean, very creative. Thanks for the update.
Good. Okay, we're right at 9:30. So if there's one last quick question, otherwise, I think we'll skip our normal reports this month. I don't see any of the reps that would give us normal reports anyhow. So I'm going to go ahead and adjourn us. Brittney, thanks for the presentation.
Thank you.
Obviously,
Thank you for
a
having me.
very important item that a lot of people have been thinking about. So thank you so much. Brian Sullivan, you get a last word?
Yeah, it's just a quick word. I'm in the class of 2022 leadership, and we picked our project for the year. Can everybody raise their hand as to if they know where the north gateway sign for the city entrance is? And if they've seen it and know what it looks like? And not many people. What about the south sign? Okay, they're both different, obviously, and the south sign, most people don't even know where it's at. They just tell everybody it's at East Middle and Monterey Highway. The north sign's at Tilton and Monterey Highway. The leadership class is presenting to the city council for approval new gateway signs. We have the design done, and that's coming to the council the coming Wednesday. So once we get that approval, we can start moving on building the gateway signs. The new gateway signs will be at Old Monterey Highway and Monterey Highway as you come up underneath the train trestle. And the south sign will be at Butterfield and Monterey Highway, where the city is eventually going to build a park. So in both those areas, we're going to have very nice large signs that are going to read, if it's approved, "Welcome to Morgan Hill, a caring community established 1906. So I'll be able to report back further, hopefully at the next meeting, that things are moving ahead. We expect to have the projects completed by August 1st. And we'll have some nice new gateway signs that'll be there forever. Thanks for allowing me to mention this.
Thanks, Brian. Another cool Leadership Morgan Hill project. Thanks so much. Okay, everyone, we're going to adjourn and hope you have a great rest of your week. Go add Twitter stock to your retirement portfolio before Elon Musk buys it all up. Have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.